Hello, everyone, and welcome to I Like to Read with me, your host, Rachel Polanski. This is a new podcast slash YouTube show about reading and all the kind of joys and woes and highs and lows that come along with being a bookworm. So who am I? Why am I qualified to do this podcast? Well, ever since I was a young, wee little one, I've always enjoyed reading. One of those kids who was brought to the library, checked out a ton of books, came back, read them to their stuffed animals. I understand that the reading in school and the books that they force you to read can often turn a lot of people off from reading. Fortunately, I just always had such a love for my own particular, went through waves. When I was younger, it was, elementary, Nancy Drew, Boxcar Children, Junie B. Jones, all that jazz, Magic Tree House. We got into a YA phase that kind of started around third or fourth grade. Don't want to humble brag, but my reading level was always quite advanced. I was reading Harry Potter in like first grade or, whatever. But yeah, so I was always reading. So the young adult love kind of started probably a little bit too young, but hey, I think it helped me develop socially, whatnot. And then we transitioned into more. There was a period of sort of like a chick lit, adult books, but not exactly the heaviest stuff. And then as we got older, there was always just that contemporary fiction, and through that we've got historical nonfiction, memoirs. I'm really open to any kind of book, and I just love reading. I will, in my spare time, that's pretty much what I'm always doing. Even pre-corona, pre-pandemic, I live a pretty introverted lifestyle. Go to work, come back, read, watch TV, play with my cat in the background, hang out with my boyfriend Jason. Shout out to Jason for helping me produce this and pushing me to get myself out there. So in terms of reading, yeah. So I read 5 to 7 to 8 or 9 books a week, and you might be saying to yourself, that is freaking crazy, and there's no way I believe that, and bye. And you can doubt me, but I do. I mean, I really do spend hours and hours during the week reading. If I have a break during work, back when we were physically working in the building, if I had to go walk to a different floor or wait in line 10 minutes at the pharmacy, always bring your Kindle. ABYK is my big model, which leads me into how do I like to read? And again, this might be a big controversy for some readers out there, but I am a huge fan of the Kindle and digital readers in general. So why? I want to say about 8 or 9 years ago, I got an iPad mini for my birthday. Thank you, parents, dad. And I downloaded the Kindle app and took it with me everywhere. And soon I was spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on those Kindle books. And you may be saying to yourself, well, there's something about that physical copy. There's something about having that book on the shelf. And I'm here with you. I agree. I just think when you read at the volume that I'm reading, I mean, we live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles. And I think if we filled it with the books that I had since, I started the e-reader, like there wouldn't be room. I don't have the space to carry all of that around. When I was younger, I would, fill up a third of my suitcase with hardcover books, and they were heavy. And I remember leaving them back at the hotel or wherever we were and not taking them with me. And I think that really, emblemizes that it's really about the story. It's about the content. It's not so much about the form. We do have a couple bookshelves in the apartment. I certainly am not against buying physical books. If it's, important, if it's signed, if there's quite a few books that I've been given as gifts. So I'm not against it, but also just the convenience of the Kindle. Also, about a year ago, I finally, discovered the Los Angeles Public Library Kindle selection. Shout out to Overdrive, the app that it uses. I'm not sponsored, but I wish I was, because every time I get that little email that says, your hold is available from the Los Angeles Public Library. It's just like a nice little bump of like, cocaine, or, not that I would know what that feels like. But it's just like a nice little rush of like, I used to spend $10 to $13 on this book, and now I'm getting it for free thanks to the exorbitant amount of money I put towards my taxes. As you will find as we continue down this journey, I read mostly contemporary fiction, encompassing also, historical nonfiction, memoirs, but it's pretty much contemporary in that it's usually been published recently. A lot of that is due to the fact that I'm keeping up with what's new in the literary scene, and I'm all up on Goodreads and all that. Another great thing about using the e-reader is, God, it's so freaking hard to keep track of what I would read. Because it's, even though a book may have been fantastic, I read 10 other books right after I read that, and it's kind of just whoop out of my mind. So what's nice about the Kindle is that it connects automatically to Goodreads. Again, not sponsored, but would love to be. And it automatically connects, so and then I can rate each one. Usually the books I read are around 3 to 4 stars, so I don't really want to waste my time on a 1 or a 2 star. And it, commodifying and giving it a rating definitely might take a little bit away from it, but it's just such a nice way I can then look back at my books that I've read, which is what we're about to get into, and see what I've read and, how I felt about them. And, whenever someone's, what can I read? What have you read that's great? Instead of being like, well, I remember, and I don't have the physical copies to go back and reference, which is definitely a downside that I can't really pass that on, but at least I can pass on the name of the book and the story and encourage that person to hopefully use an e-reader in the Los Angeles Public Library and Overdrive. Look at me, already getting referrals. So what are we doing here? Like I said, I read a lot of books. And I know that that's probably the rate that I read is not attainable to most people. Even reading 1 book a week, maybe even 1 book a month may seem daunting. Just do what you can. I think all that matters is that you make the time for reading, whether you think you're really slow or there's nothing out there that interests you or you don't have the time. There's always time. People can read at whatever level they want to, and you just haven't found the right book. So I'm going to give you 5 of the best, maybe not the best, but 5 of the most recommendable, the 5 of the most palatable books that I have read that week. I probably did read more, and then a few of them just didn't make it in. And then it'd be kind of great if, you wanted to maybe choose one of these books and set yourself for a new challenge, whether it's every week I'm going to read a book. Every month I'm going to read a book. But hopefully you'll find something on this list that you'll enjoy. And if not, then we'll have new recommendations every week. So let's get started. The first book that I read last week that I'm going to talk to you about is called False Bingo, Stories by Jemc. J-A-C is her first name, last name J-E-M-C. And again, I wish I have the physical copy. Another thing that is great it is kind of nice to show, here's the physical object I have to show for my time. But like I said before, reading kind of just, it is absorbing this. It doesn't matter how you absorb the story. What matters is that you did. So Jacques, I hope I'm saying that right. Jacques, going to be a lot of author mispronunciations, but what can you do? So False Bingo is a book of short stories, and your girl loves some short stories. They're also a great way for someone who is maybe, feels a little bit daunting to delve into a 200 or 300 page full novel, but maybe you can grab a book of short stories. This one in particular has 20, and they're all pretty short stories. Each of them is no more than 10 to 15 pages. So, maybe just you can challenge yourself to read 1 or 2 short stories a night. And this is a great place to get started. Jack is a wonderful female horror author, which you don't see too often. This book in particular, really just kind of, it's a great short story collection that talks about the horrors, and not even so much the horrors, but the weirdness and the discomfort of the everyday. It's definitely not horror in the sense of like a Stephen King sort of large overwhelming horror, but it's, like I said, the horror of the everyday. There's a couple of short stories of note. One of them is called Delivery, about a dad or a elderly father who develops an online shopping addiction, and that definitely hit a little bit close to home. But all of a sudden, he starts ordering Wii's and other TVs that he doesn't need, and Snuggies and anything you see online. But then he starts getting a second Wii, and then a third Wii. And, there's a little bit of mental illness at play. There's a little bit of sort of just capitalism and commodification. That was one of the best ones. The other standout story in that for me was called Trivial Pursuit. Again, another sort of horror, uncanny of the everyday, just kind of a story about a unnamed couple that goes to a game night at another couple's house, and this couple is literally the worst, but the worst in the sense that they are the kind of people who will say, what would you like to drink? But we only have this one wine bottle. Or what game do you want to play? But they already have Trivial Pursuit, the name of the story, set up, so there's not really a choice. And they're all just written, they're not spare by any means, but they're the sort of stories that are very palatable. They are beautiful in their silences. And so that's one that obviously I recommend all these books, but that especially is a good place to get started for someone who is a little bit daunted by a larger novel. The next one that we have is called Temporary by Hilary Leichter, something. Temporary. What can I say about Temporary? First of all, it's weird, but like weird in a good way. It's, what I knew about it going into it was it's about a young woman who lives a life of doing temp jobs, and kind of expected something a little bit fun, something to set it apart from what seems like a boring premise. And it was kind of it's similar to Jacques Jemc's style in the sense that it's slightly surreal, slightly takes the everyday and exposes the horror or the discomfort underneath it. This one in a much more literal way. As a temporary, some of her jobs include being somebody there to haunt a house, or cleaning out a woman's shoe closet, or a large chunk of the book is spent actually on sea, filling in for somebody on a boat and her adventures there. And it's really just a meditation kind of on the workplace, and especially as a millennial myself, the connection to one's career and life, and sort of the permanence or lack of permanence of it, as well as just the satirization of the overall structure of the workplace. And this is also another really short one. Really short, I think it was 250, a little less than that. And then again, another one of those not too overly written, a little bit dense in sections, but for the right reasons. So, it's heavier than a typical beach read, but I would definitely say it's fun. And there's probably a lot of people who will relate to what's going on in it. So check that one out. The next one feels a bit gratuitous. It's called I'd Rather Be Reading: The Delights and Dilemmas of the Reading Life by Anne Bogel. So we can't get much more meta than that. Anne Bogel is an author that I just discovered last week because I read her newest book before this one. I'll talk about that in a second. But a book about reading a book about reading is kind of pretty much amazing to me. So I picked it up. It felt a lot like an extended version of my college essay, which I wrote about reading. But it was really wonderful to read the book from a reader. And when I mean a reader, I mean, plenty of authors. They are authors because they have a fantastic way with words, but there is something about being just, you can be a good author, but I don't know if you can be a good reader, and really just appreciating other people's works. It was part sort of memoir and Anne's kind of transition from becoming a reader later in life. And well, later, for me, I was always a big part of my life. For her, it was as well, but she didn't really discover her passion as much until her early 20s. And that is where our paths diverge. She has 4 children under 40. She is under 40 and has 4 children. I have none and won't for quite some time. But we share the same passion for reading and what we love about it and the pitfalls of it and attachments to libraries and all that good stuff. And it was just really fun and light, and I mean, yeah, it was a fun book. So whether or not maybe this is good for you if you don't love reading, so you can, hopefully this podcast will inspire you to read. But if you're looking at reading as something that feels like a chore or daunting, and you're really wondering, like, how can I fall in love with this? Like, how can I make this something that I really want to do? Give Anne's book a try, because maybe it'll remind you and spark something in you that a traditional book wouldn't necessarily. It's a good primer for sure. So Anne's other book that I read before, which came out recently, is called Don't Overthink It. Make easier decisions, stop second guessing, and bring more joy to your life. That title is a mouthful. And it also kind of sounds like a self-help book. It's not. It gives a lot of tips, and it's kind of feels a little bit workbooky at times, but she also, again, intersperses her own life and her own experiences, and I think that really made me connect to her. I read this before even knowing about how much of a reader and lover of literature that she was, so I felt an immediate connection. I too tend to overthink and ruminate things. I've been diagnosed with generalized anxiety, have been dealing with that for a large part of my life. It ebbs and flows, but overthinking is definitely something that I do a lot. And it was really just comforting to hear somebody else vocalize the way that I'm feeling, as well as offer some tips and tricks that felt a little bit deeper and more personable than reading an article on like Refinery 29 or something. Both of those books are also under 200 pages, I believe. Again, so great books. Maybe if you are someone who thinks that you're not a fiction person and you kind of like to read more like how-to or informational books, these are a good mix of that type of vibe, but like written by someone who really is a reader at heart, so knows how to give the reader a good experience. And lastly, we have Fractured Tide by Leslie Lutz. This is a good old young adult thriller survival novel. There was a time in my life, starting at a very young age, I want to say around 10, where I was really into young adult books. I feel like they helped me kind of mature and helped my growth, at least, internally. I thought I was like 25, but I was 12. But I felt like I really understood those experiences, and I got them, just, that 16-year-old in Malibu who really just had a hard life. But yeah, there was a time where I read a lot of young adult novels, and of course, I got older. I read a lot, I read fast, but what I choose to read is still important. I don't want to waste my time on a trivial novel. Every so often you need something lighter. There's plenty of young adult books out there that are great for adults as well and perfect for all ages. This one's actually one of them. So this is one of those ones that I saw who knows how long ago online somewhere as an upcoming new book, recommended it to the Los Angeles Public Library, which is kind of like a way of digitally pre-ordering it for free. So this one was available to me this week. So naturally I read it first. And Fractured Tide, what happens? So it's kind of like Lost meets teen novel. This girl, Sia, I think her name was something Greek. She goes on a boating trip. She's an expert diver with some other friends. Their boat capsizes. They get shipwrecked on an island, except this island's kind of wonky, and it turns out that gotta stay hydrated, drink lots of water, very important. Blah blah blah. She gets shipwrecked. turns out like the island has some weird stuff going on with it. I don't want to give away too many spoilers on this one. The thing about young adult is I find that often they objectively, they are not as well written or literary as a lot of the other things I read, but they're fun. And the plots are usually ridiculous, like most teen movies. This one has, a weird sea creature and some weird like time traveling stuff and like unclear whether or not they're going to survive. And the writing was not bad, because there's a lot of books where even if the plot is fantastic and the best thing you've ever read, it's like the writing is abysmal. So it was fast paced. It was interesting. I think it was a unique enough situation. Don't get me wrong, I love a good like romantic high school young adult novel, even like the murder or true crime ones, but having it set on an island and sort of, I've been in a pirate mood, always in a pirate mood, that really just kind of gave it a uniqueness. So if you are somebody who kind of wants something a little bit lighter, maybe not as challenging, still something fun and thriller and intriguing, and definitely the kind of book where you do want to just keep reading to figure out what happens. It's very fast paced and a lot happens. Give that a check out. So those are 5 of the books that I read last week that I'm recommending to you. Like I said, I watch a lot of TV. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I watch movies occasionally. And I do have a blog separate from this called Media Maven, where every week we do throw in 1 or 2 book selections, but we also throw in a mix of those. And I want to keep this to books for the most part, but I do want to mention a really important series that I watched just last week that I think everybody should watch. It is called America to Me on Stars, and it is 10 episodes, each about an hour, about Oak Park River something, Oak Park River Field. They just call it Oak Park. Anyways, it's a high school in Chicago, and this series really just blew me away. It was filmed in 2016, released in 2018. I watched it last week and wish I had watched it sooner. But with everything going on in the world, I definitely wanted to educate myself more on Black stories and stories that I wouldn't normally pay attention to necessarily. And this one just, my God, I mean, you'd think that something so boring necessarily, but you say, okay, it's about a high school and the kids there. But the way that these filmmakers take a complete unbiased look at really the structural levels of what leads to success and what leads somebody to become who they are and how important high school is for that. But what we don't see and what you don't understand, especially if you have the privilege of being white and grew up in an upper middle class location with a good school and didn't have to worry about a lot of things, just to see the different things that people have to deal with and the different struggles that they face and the way that they approach school. The kids that they focus on, I think they also just selected some really great kids. I mean, there's this one kid, Charles, I think that's his name, who does like a spoken word piece that, I mean, I couldn't even find it online really, but it just really was amazing. And for something that's over 10 hours, like, I was never bored. Like, there was just, they balance looking at the socioeconomical struggles and the political struggles and everything about being a human being in the world, and how much high school and the resources and the experiences that we have shape us either for success or not for success. So I know everyone's talking, about things like 13th and When They See Us, and those are all great. But I haven't seen anybody really talking about America to Me. And I think if we want to really look at the root of these issues and really see why Black kids are so disadvantaged, or why children of color don't get as many opportunities as white kids, this documentary is definitely a good place to start. So that's it from me for now. I hope you take at least one of these suggestions and either purchase it or get it from your local library, and then comment below and let me know what you thought about it. Also make sure that you follow the podcast on Instagram. I'm also going to be posting just kind of weekly, maybe daily, updates about what I'm reading, maybe a particular spotlight on a book of note. And then make sure you follow me on Goodreads as well. That way you can stay connected to what I'm reading in real time and take a look at the over 1,000 of books that I have read and rated just in the past 4 years, I want to say. So links will be in the description box below, as well as the names and titles, the names of the authors and titles of these books. And until next time, keep reading.